Let's see. So today, these trees right here, they've got to come down. There are some others. So there's several trees right here. They're pretty good sized trees. So that's what we're going to be doing today. So let's get at it. All right, guys, this angle might actually be a little bit better. So now we're down in where the pond would be. This is obviously what I moved. So if I take that around, this tree, these two trees need to come down, and possibly that tree. They need to come down, and then I'm hoping that that tree will not, it might be right at the water line, but I think it's going to be okay. And then I've got a whole bunch of just smaller trees through here. This is one of the springs, but I've got to open this spring up. But all of this obviously has to come out. And so I'm going to cut the spring back up this hill until it's about even with the water line. The water level. I don't think you can really tell, but this actually goes up quite steeply, even in this direction, although it reaches out a little bit farther up the hill. This is very steep here, as is this. This is also very steep. Okay, so you're probably getting washed out by the sun. Let's get at it. Alrighty, let's see here. So, give you a reference point. There's the tractor. So I'm in the woods that I just showed you, going up the steep hill. Hopefully you can see some elevation here. This is the third tree I referenced that was up on the hills that I said would probably have to come down. Hopefully not the one just behind it. So what I'm doing here is I'm just making my way with this 18-inch barred still MS 251C saw. That's my saw. The other one that I have right now is a buddy who loaned me his Husqvarna. It is a 24-inch bar, and that's what I'll use to cut down these bigger trees. So this was the first tree I made reference to. There's the open field that will be the pond bottom, and then there's the second tree there. So you can see I'm just sort of making my way through, cutting all this out. I'll then grab a hold of it with the tractor, pull all this stuff out so I can get good access to the trees. Fortunately, they're actually leaning the way I want them to. This first one, so I'm going to cut them. You can see, hopefully, that this one here is farther out towards the pond than that one is. So I'm going to cut that one down first, then that one, then the one that's behind me, so that I don't create any widow makers, because I don't want to do that. And I assume you know what a widow maker is, meaning a tree hung up in another tree. So a felled tree or a dropped tree that is hung up in a standing tree that wants to come down whenever it wants to come down. And that's never a good scenario. Okay, so we're staying at it. I hope you can kind of get the perspective of what I'm doing here, right? So I'm just taking out all these small trees and brush. A lot of this stuff is actually cut, but it's hung up. There's a lot of Virginia creeper. I don't know if you can see it going up that oak tree. I hope I don't have to take that oak tree down. But all of that Virginia creeper is hanging up a lot of these saplings. So obviously I'll have to pull all that out. But yeah, I've cut up through there. And I'll show you something in a second. I think, in my opinion, which isn't that experienced, frankly, but my opinion is that you're probably more likely to get some injury cutting this sort of sapling stuff than cutting a big tree. Not to say that the big tree isn't a lot more dangerous and certainly more capable of killing you. But you're going to see something that I just did, and it's because you kind of get into a routine. You could just cut, and you're not thinking about every cut quite like the way you are when you've got this massive tree that you're carefully sort of thinking about and planning and systematically dropping. with these things, you tend to cut through. You just look and see which way it's leaning, and if it's leaning in a safe direction away from you, you just cut it. But you're going to see in a second. I'll just take a picture of it. I won't yak at you. But you're going to know exactly what I did, because I pinched the bar in a tree that was clearly leaning towards the way I was cutting. I'm going to take this notch out. I'm going to bring over, make sure I have shims, and take another look around, make sure that I sort of feel it. And then I'm going to have to, be graceful in doing this, not just try to whip through it, but, cut in, start to feel the tree. What's it doing? Is it sitting down in the notch? What's it exactly doing? And if it's not doing what I want it to do, to use the shims to sort of see if I can't force it to accept my input. One other thing real quick here, although I have to clean that notch up a bit, looks like I went a little too deep on the far side, which means I've really got to consider where my hinge is, because it looks like my hinge is definitely not straight. And I don't want to go too far over that way. Now, if you cut the hinge on that side, it's going to come towards you, like this way, not that way. That's not going to aid in the notch. So that's a real concern. That means I'm actually dropping it probably a little bit more towards me. So I'm going to have to kind of come in at an angle to make sure that I don't go through that end too fast, because otherwise it's going to want to come towards me, depending on, of course, the weight of the tree. But I also wanted to show you the coloration in here. Sometimes you get in here and there's obviously a big hole in the middle of it. This one doesn't. It's a sumac. I assume that darkness is normal and not rot, but the density of the wood is something that obviously you got to consider. And again, go to Bucking Billy Ray or somebody who actually knows what they're doing. I'm just doing this as a sort of for homesteaders who may have never felled a tree before. Okay, a couple things real quick. First, so I stopped just to see where I'm at. First, you can see my notch is not actually level, which is not good. Somebody who is really experienced at this is not going to do that, because that, again, creates, dynamics. The reason that it's not completely level is, I hope you can see it, there you go. So it's because my notch, my first cut, wasn't exactly level. And this is the side that I cut into a little too far, right? So I want to make sure that this hinge, which is now this deep, right, from there to there, that hinge, I want to make sure that I sort of leave it in place. But you'll see that my cut is coming into the two parts, and that's why. So my original cut is a little off, which means that cut is a little off. I think it'll be fine, because we're going to play it slow. Yeah, we'll use some wedges and stuff if we need to see, but we're just going to take it easy, take it slow, see with the top of the tree, not the kerf. This is not really what you're looking at. You look at the top of the tree. What's the top? Where's the top of the tree going, right? That's where the leverage is. So, my hinge is a little bit too thick. That's part of the issue here. And so I was a little bit cautious, as I should be. So I left the hinge probably a little bit too thick. So it's definitely opening up. I don't know if you can see from your angle, but that saw blade, the saw chain width previously is now half an inch gap. So it's actually, I can hear it. I don't know if you can hear it cracking. I've got the earplugs in. I think I can hear it cracking. Anyway, so the short of it is that when you're at this point, you need to remember you want to be two places when that starts to go. 45 degrees or directly behind it, far behind it, because when it kicks, it often sweeps. It's going to sweep. Going 45 degrees is a big sweep, which is the reason I've cleared this around here. You can see well, I don't know that you can see that I've cleared so much out, but I've cleared a lot out so I can get the hell out of Dodge. Yeah, it seems to be leaning significantly now. Classic. Wouldn't you know? Just classic. So as soon as I took the camera off, I went over to just see how loose the wedges were. And they were both loose. I could just pull them out. And next thing I know, that the tree just slowly and gracefully just toppled over. So let's quickly look at a couple things. So, the wedges, I think, were the right answer for what I was doing. You can see the hinge. It's way too big, and that's a good lesson. I teach people this with firearms training all the time. A lot of times, it's when you create a problem for yourself when you try to be too gentle, or your insecurity causes you to make decisions such as leaving the wedge too big, right? So now I'm fighting with the tree when really all it wants to do is do what I had. If I had just continued on with the cut of that hinge, it would have done the same thing. But I create a problem by not following through my insecurity causing me to not manipulate the tools as they're expected. All right, this next tree is the most challenging. I just showed you a picture of the one that I just notched out. That one was going beautifully until the Virginia creeper. Look at the size of this Virginia creeper. The Virginia creeper grabbed a hold of it and rotated it on its axis and then dropped it basically straight out over the pond where I really wanted to go to the right. Anyway, no big deal. This one, I have the cut up to the face. This one's the most challenging because it is leaning out over the pond. That's good news. But the mass of the tree at the top is all to the right. And to the right is the tractor. And I'd prefer not to drop this tree on the tractor. For some reason, I don't know. I guess it's just because it's new. So I think what I'm gonna try to do here is a plunge cut. And if I do that successfully and I'm alive, I'll show you with the chainsaw inside of the tree, but obviously I can't do it and film at the same time. Okay, here we go. Okay. I did do the plunge cut. Let's just say it wasn't pretty. But this tree is where the other tree was. Look at the gap there. So it's definitely going to go down that direction. I have the notch cut so that it would go farther to the right. Unless it twists as it falls, it's not going to do that. With the smaller tree, one thing that I have been fairly successful at is being able to stay with the tree and cut that hinge just at the right moment to get it to sort of angle in the direction that I want it to go. But with something with this girth, and I haven't cut these size trees down in a while, I think it's just safer just to make my cuts. And as with the last one, let Mother Nature sort of take its course. When you see the hinge, I don't think you're going to be very impressed, because I did come in behind it, but I was high. And so it sort of left a mess. So that's why I don't really want to mess with it, because, you never know how these little fibers are going to act. And like I said the last time, just that Virginia creeper Man, it totally changed the direction of the fall of that tree. All right, I don't really want to drop you off. I think I'll just keep you on here, and then I'll just edit a lot of this crap out. Here she goes. Remember when I mentioned to you about leverage and mass? Yeah. The problem is you can't fight physics. And like I said, the weight of that tree was all to the right. And the tree was supposed to fall straight out from you, and you can clearly see that it did not. Fortunately, it didn't fall completely to the weight of the mass, because if it had, I'd be without a tractor right now. It basically fell a little bit more, probably about 11 o'clock, whereas I wanted it to go at 2 o'clock. That's a lot off. But it had all that weight on that one side. And I had the notch, and I had the wedges and everything sort of forcing it to go. And I even had the, by the time I got done here, because I had to keep cutting, which you didn't see, I had cut away completely the hinge on this side, because I wanted the tree to weigh in and against the other hinge, which I think it did. I mean, it took a long time. It just wouldn't go, wouldn't go, wouldn't go. So I knew that obviously I was fighting physics, but it was like, who's going to win that? So I think, you know, it's like a landing of an aircraft. Anytime you can walk out of it, it's a safe landing. This one was not a good fell, but it was a safe fell. So it's down. I can get to it. And so now I can move on with the rest of the project. Now comes the cleanup. All right, guys, have a good one. We'll check out for tonight and then get at it tomorrow bucking all this up. Thanks for watching.